two sisters, and when my mom was 39, she passed away. She had heart trouble, and we didn't have any insurance, and her arms would ache all the time, and that. And then one snowy day in February, snowstorm. It was just Dad and Dale and I. My sisters were over at my aunt's and uncle's. The guy was gone too, my younger brother. And all of a sudden, she wasn't responding. She wasn't eating, and said, we gotta call an ambulance. In a snowstorm, and back then they didn't even have an ambulance. In '72, we had the local hearse in Buxton was the ambulance. So they come out in a snowstorm and took her to Mayville. And, oh God, just pray that she'll be alive. And when we got there, she had passed away on the way. But before she died, she said she was struggling and turning in the bed, and she said that God will take care of you. And her face lit up like a light bulb, and she was gone. And that is true. That has been true over the years. God has truly taken care of us, and we each have wonderful families, and all of us kids get together, but it was hard on Dad. He didn't know the Lord at the time. He said, you'll never understand what it's like to lose a mate, he said. And my mom's prayers were answered because he did come to know the Lord, and it was through the preaching of Dale. They had special meetings at our church, like 4 years in a row, I think it was. They come, and that one time he said to Dale, he said, we have to talk. And he had to go back there, sit in the pew, and let him tell the Lord what a radical change it was in his life. And that's what happens when we invite Jesus into our heart and life and confess our sins and believe on him. Well, have you ever been in an accident? Or is there such a thing as an accident with God? Well, that's what I don't know if I was given a subject, but I had the experience of hitting a lady on a bicycle with my truck. I don't know. This has probably been 8-10 years ago, maybe. Time goes so fast. Well, this time of the year, we're really busy hauling edible beans. That's what I do. One spring, they come to me and said, can you haul 5 loads of beans? And that was like 30 years ago during spring's work. And they said, well, you haven't hauled your 5 loads of beans yet. So that has been a blessing and a lot of work, but they had a receiving station in Pizik, North Dakota, if you know where Pizik is, you know where Grafton is, in that area, Park River. And I had been there two or three times that day, and they asked, are you coming back to get another load? And I said, well, if you want me to. And so we had Bible study that night, and I was leading. So I said I would come back to get a load, and if you say you're going to do something, then do it. So then I had to cancel Bible study. Right away there was a check in my spirit, but I took off to Pizik, and it was at this time of the year going west into the sun. It just blinds you. And here I was driving along, I was only a couple miles from Pizik, and I heard something metal. And I pulled over and stopped on the road, and with a truck, you always seem to be running over something. And I got out and I walked and I looked and I didn't see anything. And then I turned back again and looked across the approach, and there was a body laying there. And I go, oh God. And I went over to her, and I thought she was dead. But she was alive, and she wanted me to lift her up, and I knew that's the only thing I knew that I shouldn't do. And I put my hand on her forehead, and I learned this prayer from my brother Dale, that God, please heal her from the top of her head to the bottom of her feet. And she gave me a great big smile, and then she was moving around in much pain. So I ran to finally to get somebody to come. And just about a month before that, I was Dale and I were helping clean out a farmstead for my favorite mother-in-law in Roseland. And a power pole, we were pulling out a power pole, and it busted off at the ground. And good thing I was walking backwards. And here comes the pole at you. If I would have walked away from it, it would have hit me in the head, and that would have been the end. And I saw the power pole coming, move to the right, and boom, it hit me, and it knocked me to the ground. And then it rolled off, and it hurt. And then I moved one leg, and that one moves, the other one moves. That's a good sign. But it had knocked my hip out of place, and I had to quit driving for a while because I couldn't sit. And this was the first time that I had actually ran to the truck for help. And then I went back to her, and here the first responders come, and they were from Pizik. I'll never forget the love that this one gal, they own the store in Pizik. It's an old store. It's been around for 100 years. They buy 5 tons of candy every year, and that people come from all over the world, from a long distance to buy candy. They have all sorts of it, and I bought my share, believe me. And this one responder, she said, I really felt bad that we had to leave you on the road that night. I should have stayed with you. And I've never seen an outpouring of love as I did from the people there. And so they hauled this lady away. I'd never met her, didn't know who she was. And 4 hours later, I knew that patrolmen would be coming, and they sent for me. I prayed, God, send me a merciful patrolman. He sent me 4 of them that were, one was just as nice as the other one. And I said, I suppose I'm at fault. I run into her, hit her. He said, well, not necessarily. The reports showed that she flew 75 feet, and the bicycle flew 150 feet into the field. And I was borrowing a truck at the time, which complicated the matters even worse. But that truck had a Texas bumper on it. If I would have had my truck, I probably more than likely would have run over her. And there were scrub marks on the bumper from the tire, and I never seen her. I honestly, she obviously flew right front of my eyes. I didn't see her, and I believe that was God's provision too, because if I would have known that I hit somebody like that, I probably would have had a heart attack right there. So God, in His mercy, and was very merciful and kind. Well, I called up a local pastor that lives in Park River. We were good friends, Pastor Harvey Jackson. I don't know, probably some of you know him. And he lived in Park River, and he come down and he sat with me for 4 hours as we went through. When you have a commercial vehicle, they go through this and they go through that. And it got to be about close to midnight, and the patrolman advised me that you should go get an alcohol test. I know that you're not you're not drinking, but you don't know who you hit. And so I did that. And when I got to the hospital in Park River, this gal, her name is Lucy. They were right away, they knew at the hospital who it was, and Lucy worked at the hospital as a nurse's aide. Lucy she is a petite, maybe 5 feet, hard-working Czechoslovakian. She lost her husband when he was about 60. He smeared butter on everything and ate lousy diet, and she said, one of these days you're going to drop over from a heart attack. That's exactly what he did. Right after beet harvest, living on Diet Coke, and he collapsed in the bed on the living room floor. There she was with 11 kids. And she went back to school, got her nursing degree, and then she was very active in farming. So that's the type of person I had. Well, the one son lives in Reynolds, and I wasn't at home at the time, and he'd come to our house and talk to Rose, and he said there were 2 victims in that accident, and that was really a nice thing, and that's the kind of family. All 11 of those kids were just as nice. And right away I knew that if her kids are like that, that had to come from somewhere. So anyway, as time went on, I couldn't sleep at night, and I would hate to go to bed, and I would wake up with the bed would be wet, cold sweats, and I would have to pray, Satan, get away from me, I'm under the blood of Jesus. And we would keep checking on the Caring Bridge. She had 77,000 hits, or whatever you want to call it, on the Caring Bridge. So we would keep in contact. I remember my name being on the news the next day that I got home, that I had hit Lucy, and she went to Grand Forks, and she was immediately went to the trauma center in Minneapolis. I didn't know this was going to be that emotional. I've told this story many, many times. And so we were going down to Minneapolis for meetings. Dale and I, and I said, I want to go see Lucy, and I need to. And he was willing to go with me, and there were a couple of the daughters there. They had called everybody home because they didn't know if she was going to make it. And so we didn't even know who to look for when we got to the trauma center. We had to have help, and they said, this is so-and-so. When I got to the door, I said, I am so sorry. And the two daughters come to the door, and we hugged and we cried. And they said, tell us what went on, nobody else knows, we want to know. So he did, and we talked for quite a while, and they were really nice girls, two of them there then. And Dale wanted to go in and pray with Lucy in the trauma, in the room there in the trauma center. And they said, yeah, we'd like you to do that. And I said, physically I can get in there, but emotionally I don't know if I'm ready for this. And they said, whatever is best for you. And I thought, God, you've dragged me this far. You can drag me the rest of the way in. And so we got into her room, and she broke vertebrae in her neck, so she had a halo on. Her spinal cord was stretched to the max, but it wasn't damaged. Her foot was really bad shape because it hit the side of the truck and took the turning signal off, and there was fiberglass in her clothing from the scraping on the side. So the daughter, after Dale had prayed, she said, would you like to get alongside of her and say whatever you need to say? She was heavily sedated. She was a petite little thing, but she was swelled up like a marshmallow. And I got alongside of her. And I said, I am so sorry. Please forgive me. And after that, I had such a peace. I was able to sleep again. I think I slept just about all the way home. And yet, she was in a trauma center for quite a while. And then she got moved to another hospital in St. Paul. So Rose and I, we went down there right away. And here's this, I was so scared. Well, I was when we went to the trauma center. I remember seeing the Metrodome. It was a few years ago. And I would have sooner been at a baseball game in the Metrodome than going to the trauma center, I can tell you that. But this time we were going to meet face to face. We'd never talked to one another. She has quite a sense of humor. And so when we got to the room, here she was sitting in a wheelchair with her halo on. She couldn't look up, so I had to get down on my knees. And I said, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. That's the most beautiful words I've ever heard. That let your heart rest. It was an accident. Many people, maybe that doesn't mean a lot, but to me it meant they were the most beautiful words I ever heard. And then I said, I prayed for you in the ditch. Can I pray for you now? And she said, yes. So I prayed for her then. And so as time went on, wasn't long before she got transferred to the rehab center in Grand Forks. And right away, we went there to encourage her. And she was having trouble walking, and she was in very good physical shape. She rode, I think she was going for 70 miles on her bike for some goal when I hit her, and she loved to walk. She was in excellent physical shape. And she said, I don't know if I'll be able to walk again. And I said, yes, you can do it. You know, we encourage her, and she was so depressed. Well, it wasn't more than a couple days and she was out of the rehab, which was a miracle. And she went home with a walker, and there's steps up to her house. She walked up on the steps of her house on her 70th birthday. And, you know, I hear that song, I Believe in Miracles. That means so much to me because I literally saw a miracle from one end to the other. How God used the patrolman to encourage me, you know, and the people in Pizik. I still go into the store, we haul beans out of there. I drive by the place where I can remember that place so well. And I drive by it and I just go like this, even this long ago. And yet I know that God's mercy and grace are very real. And the people in the Pizik store, I go into the Pizik store whenever I can and buy this and buy that. And what did I learn from this? And that God is very gracious, merciful, and kind, and loving, and He doesn't forget about us. Well, as time went on, this news got out to the Marilyn Haggerty in the Grand Forks Herald. And she called me up when I was driving down the interstate. And I had to talk to all kinds of people. There was a lot of insurance companies that got involved in this, and I just hated to see the phone ring. And here was Marilyn Haggerty, and she heard that I'd been down to the trauma center and asked for forgiveness. I thought, boy, this is something really different. So she interviewed me, and I said what went on, and the final thing I said to her, I said, you make sure that you put in this article that Jesus, my best friend, never left us in a ditch alone. That was true. Because when we were in the ditch alone, there's another verse that says that angels encamped around you. And I could sense that, and there was such an awesomeness there that I wouldn't trade that for the world, that experience. It was so awesome. And I said, you make sure that everybody that reads this paper, and I knew truckers were going to read this paper, but make sure that Jesus, my best friend, never left us. And He didn't. And I talked to truckers who had read that they'd never talked to me before. And I'd never really heard a negative comment for that, but only, wow, that would be quite a man to do something like this. I tell you, I didn't do anything. I just watched God do it and watched Him work. And to God be the glory, great things He has done. And that's what I wanted to get across, that God deserves the praise and God deserves glory. Well, that's not the end of the story. Lucy we got a letter in the mail, a card from her, and it's opened it up, and she said, I received a settlement from the insurance company. And I thought of you. Put it up, and a check fell out. How many people hurt somebody as bad as that? And this couple lost their home in Fergus Falls, the Hayning family. You probably heard of them. And they wanted us to move them. And, well, yeah, that'll be fine. Well, where are you moving? Well, we don't know yet. Well, that's okay. So our trailer was loaded for quite a while. And then they finally made arrangements to go to Branson, Missouri. And we moved them down there. And I said, your move is all taken care of. And but we would like some CDs that we could give to Lucy. So we wrote her a letter and said, this is what we did with money we got from you. So God works in mysterious ways. There's wonders to perform. And I'll never forget my dad. You know, in our growing up, my mom was a spiritual leader of our house. Dad didn't come to know the Lord till after my mom died. But Dad, when I called him up, and he was wondering where I was, why it took me so long to get from Peasic to Buxton, it's only like 70 miles. And I told him, I didn't call him till in the morning. And I forgot to say that night that I went to stay with Harvey Jackson's down in the basement, I was so scared. I never shut the light off. I said, I need a Bible. Give me a Bible. And the first verses that I read that night were, don't think too highly of yourself. I go, wow. Yeah, it has a way of humbling you, all right. That was the longest night I'd spent. But when I was talking to Dad the next day, I called him up. And he said, well, you're still in Peasic. What in the world have you been doing? Yeah. And when I got home, he said, boy, this is really bothering you. I kept trucking. I had to keep my sanity. And he put a hand on my shoulder, and he said, it's going to be okay. And whether he believed that or not, I really believe he did. He would always encourage us. He always expected more out of us than what he had high expectations for all of us kids. And he was a big help for me to go to, because, you know, in his later life, there was a radical change in his life. But Jesus can do wonderful things if we'll let him into our heart and life and transform us and make us a new person. So I hope I didn't bore you with this. I told this story yesterday. I have to tell you this. I was hauling beams from Garski. If you know where Garski is, you know where Devil's Lake is, north of Devil's Lake. They have a receiving station there. When I got there, they're always so good to give you food, and I never turn down food. If I do, I gotta be really sick. And so we were sitting and talking, and they asked, well, what are you gonna do this weekend then? Well, I said, I'm going to Fargo to tell about this accident. So then they wanted, what accident are you talking about? So I went through all this with them. There was 3 people there. And I stressed Jesus, that Jesus is my best friend, and that he never left us in the ditch. And I don't know what's going to become of that, but I know that God ordains the steps as well as the stops in our lives. And I'm so thankful for my wife and standing beside me and encouraging me and her and Lucy, they get along pretty well, really. When we're interviewing with Marilyn Haggerty, she said, well, wouldn't it be wonderful that someday you could go to her house and have coffee together? That was the farthest thing from my mind. You know what we did one Sunday afternoon when Rose's aunt from Montana was? I said, this would be a good day to go over and visit Lucy and have coffee with her. And we did. And when we got in her house, she has a baby grand piano, or I don't know, in her living room. She's an organist for a church there. She had music books all over the place. And it was a dream come true. So God is blessed, and God is so merciful and gracious to us. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for your mercy and your love and your grace. That you loved us so much that you sent your one and only Son, Jesus, to be our Savior, to be our Lord, and to be our coming again soon King. God, help us to be ready, waiting, and watching. God, thank you for each one that is here today, and pray for those who couldn't be with us as well. God, I thank you that we do have a cloud of witnesses. We are surrounded by people who are that you use in many ways to help one another in our time of need, and that you truly are so gracious and kind to us. And thank you again for your love and your mercy. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.